Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Talking Point on WESN, your content capital, WESN, the only nation in station broadcast in HD. My name is Sean Michael Small. Happy to be here once again to have the conversation with you, to speak about the important issues of the day. And it's an interesting phenomenon. It's almost as though the country really did take a break for the carnival season, and of course, into now the week of after carnival, I guess you could say. There is still a cool down period. It gets longer than longer. Before it used to be, Ash Wednesday, people out, but not so much now. Extended recovery vacations, I guess you could say. And the news cycle somewhat follow that trend as well. There's a lot to get into. We can't get into everything, but of course, we will get into some of the most important things. We start off the day with the daily review. And of course, we have to acknowledge, more or less, it has gone by. I believe yesterday was the one-year anniversary for the Paria tragedy. And the family members of the deceased, they got together and had themselves a little remembrance. Meanwhile, as much as they had their private moment, and they still have to deal with the loss, and in the case of one mother, has to deal with a compounded loss. That would have been her third son loss in a significantly short period of time. That is to say, Yusuf Henry, one of the four men down there. As well as the fact that, of course, the survivor, Christopher Boudram, he has to deal still with the survivor's guilt. Deal still, of course, how do you even interact with people who are your friends, but this whole is still missing. Meanwhile, for the rest of us, it's 1 year later. Are we better off? Have we progressed? Did we learn what we had to learn? Are those who should be held accountable being held accountable? Mostly because, or most importantly because, well, we have to ask, what's to prevent something like this from happening again? Because this is a common rumor, or it's a common subjective opinion with regards to various public entities. Over time, you get rid of the ones who know what they're doing. You get rid of the ones with the experience. You get rid of the ones who are not necessarily the appointees of your administration. You have inherited them as new governments come in. Eventually, the more veteran you are in your post, the more you are inherited, the more you are not automatically beholden to the current administration. And it's not just something, it's not a phenomenon that is unique or limited to this one. It's probably been happening as far back as anyone could remember with regards to claims or complaints that when a new administration comes in, they more or less get rid of everybody they could get rid to put in their own people. The problem is, it's one thing to get rid of somebody who was there for 4 years because they replace someone who was themselves gotten rid of. But it's another thing to get rid of somebody with experience, expertise, knowledge, that is a no-nonsense technocrat that is not going to be there or for foolishness or allow foolishness. But you get rid of probably the experts locally that we have. You put in people who are a bit more loyal. Unfortunately, they're not as good. And then standards drop. And then practices and procedures and regulations and accountability, those drop. And then shortcuts are made. And then, well, why do we have to go with this expensive option? Why we can't go for something cheaper? Don't mind that, I mean, do you want to cheap out on safety standards? Cheapen out on technical expertise? Cheapen out on adhering to proper guidelines and principles and ethical work behavior, because all of these things are up in the air until we get the report from the Commission of Inquiry, if it will be released to the public. It's 1 year later. The thing is, the government positioned itself to say, well, we want to get answers to you as soon as possible, so we will put on our own special investigation. No, we need a Commission of Inquiry, we don't trust that. And, you know, it was warned, well, that will take longer. Okay, fine. I appreciate the government saying that. But then now, 1 year later, is it all smoke and mirrors about will we get any information at all? And this actually might be where we have done ourselves a disservice. Because we didn't trust the government, we have allowed the situation, because we wanted a Commission of Inquiry, at least some people, to extend so far, a whole year. The emotions and the passions of the public aren't necessarily there. So now there's a greater chance, because the microscope that they were under immediately after the incident, that's somewhat lessened. It doesn't have to be totally removed, it just has to be lessened enough. The scrutiny has to be lessened enough. And now, all of a sudden, hey, maybe the Commission brought up things that causes us to ask more questions, questions that nobody really wants to answer, anyone in a position to have to answer it. It's better for everybody if this just goes away. Will it end up like that? That's the fear. And there's something to be said that if this was done, not necessarily rushed, that's the balancing act, but in a faster manner, perhaps the public, as much as I hate the concept of the emotions of the public having to drive decisions, the fervor of the public perhaps would have been enough to ensure that, well, we would have gotten information. Now again, I don't believe the Commission of Inquiry has actually given its report to the government. I could be wrong about that, but I don't believe so. So it's not up to the government yet. They haven't dropped the ball yet. I'm preempting it, maybe unfairly. I'm just saying, as time goes on, we've seen this song and dance before. Not just in TNT, in other places as well. As time goes on, there are many important House committee hearings in the states and congressional hearings and judicial subcommittees and blah, 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 blah. They still have them however many years after the event that triggers them. But for the most part, it flies under the radar. It's up, the information is available to the public, to some extent, yes, but without the public interest, it doesn't really get the traction in the public sphere that it would have if things were moved quickly. So to some extent, we have that phenomenon here, except that we have seen at times, and it's probably happened elsewhere as well. Let's not think that our level of corruption or laziness or what have you is unique to us. It's not. It's whatever the voting public will allow bureaucrats to get away with, and voting publics are quite similar across the board. So, will the public, if the Commission of Inquiry's findings are not made public, no pun intended, will the public have something to say about it? Will the government not even let it reach that point and proactively give us the reports, findings, the commissions, their conclusions? Will they give it to us? I don't know. What I do know is the fact that we have multiple families still waiting for answers 1 year later. Don't blame them if they already came to their own conclusions and have a lot to say that you may or may not like about the situation, because you left them to wallow in their own sorrow. Next topic I want to get into, of course, there's a bigger issue, one will say, in central government, but we'll get to that later on. There's a smaller similar issue going on in THA. And, it's just partisan politics all over again. I am going to oppose for the sake of opposition. Now, what St. Duke is, technically, he is part of the minority in THA. I'm not entirely sure how that works. It's not very often that the THA will have two minority parties. It's very possible, but it's not common practice. And we have not necessarily seen how Watson Duke will engage Kelvin Morris, the minority leader and only minority assemblyman at the time. He tried to support Duke. I think he was procedurally out of order at the time when the whole situation was unfolding at an THA meeting or assembly. So now Mr. Morris, he's raising concerns over a letter, and he's basically saying that the current THA, they have their people, their contractors. This is a common thing, right? We've heard this before. We've heard this with regards to Patrick Manning when he was Prime Minister in his last administration. We've heard this with just about with every government. You have your own contractors, and you mislead the public by saying how many contractors are being assessed. But at the end of the day, you all know who you want, and you're going to pick your people anyway. And it then of course implies that there might be kickbacks, other forms of corruption, etc., etc. Corruption in party financing, all of these things are more or less implied, if not outright said, right? Of course, it's the current THA executive, they fired back saying that the PNM had a cartel of contractors, and they wanted the current THA to continue with that cartel. And when you don't continue with that cartel, well then those contractors will kick up a fuss. We're not getting a chance, we're not getting a chance. I would argue that the same thing happened when Mr. Manning was doing whatever he was doing. People who were accustomed to getting preferential treatment no longer getting preferential treatment, looked as though to them they were getting sidelined and said, it's not fair, it's not fair. They were happy when the unfairness worked in their favor. Well, that's my speculation about then. And now, the thing is, Mr. Morris, if you know this to be true, because he's calling for the Secretary of Infrastructure and Quarries and Urban Development, I believe Mr. James, he's calling on the president to revoke his appointment. Because, the public was concerned about bid rigging. My thing is this, the public is concerned, okay, where is the public to voice their concerns? Maybe you should wait on the public to voice their concerns. That's how this is done. You wait on the public. When I say voice their concerns, not 2 or 3 people on the street tell you something. And if there's a whole community telling you this, you should tell them, advise them, listen, get your message out there through a media house. Get your message out there, have the rest of the country talk about it. Make it an issue for the general public to talk about. And then you come in and say, hey, there's an issue. The people are talking about it. What's being done about it? I don't like what's going on here. And then you have to pause, wait for the executive to respond. And if they're not responding in a reasonable manner, then you say revoke appointment. You don't go to the final option immediately, especially since you're not necessarily putting any concrete evidence out there. So cart is before horse. I get it. This is bubble politics 101. You make an accusation and then you go straight for the get rid of them. So-and-so must go. This one must go. The next one must go. Right now, the state is learning, yes, if I am lazy with how I operate, my laziness can be used against me when I want to take shortcuts. When I want to get people, when I want to kick people from the other party off of house committees, and then they get back the house, All of a sudden I'm complaining, oh my gosh, they're kicking us out of the House committees. That is the precedent that you set. That's the precedent that the Democratic Party set, that the Republicans, for better or worse, and I think ultimately it is worse, 2 wrongs to make a right. So now you're just doing this lazy politics, but that's the precedent that's been set. This partisan, opposed for opposing sake, and we've allowed it to happen, and this is what we get now, this laziness. Is it an issue? I mean, at least back in the day in 2010, the contractors were out in the news, and it took weeks and months of rallying. But it actually worked. Why? Because to some extent the steps were taken and the public was properly involved and invested, and not just used as a cheap whip to try to browbeat an executive that is technically more popular than you right now. So good luck with that. Moving on. Final story for the morning. One which is a bit troublesome, worrying to me. It continues now to what we were speaking about last week, and that is Atlantic LNG. Staff cuts at Atlantic LNG because, from what I understand, they have to get their staffing in line. Train 1 is not operating, and even with, I believe, cutting the staffs of the 3 trains, they still might have too much staff. Let me just make sure here. They still might have too much staff with regards to the current operations. They're trying to downsize. This technically is just after 2 weeks, give or take, of the government in various forums and avenues sending international signals about what we have, and this is what we have, and this is what we could do, and we could be a leader in energy and hydrocarbons, and we have the infrastructure, but Atlantic LNG is downsizing. Right, it recently admitted that it's only getting enough natural gas to meet 70% of the capacity of the reduced number of trains. So it's not even operating trains 2 to 4 at full capacity. The thing is, when you downsize, and this goes back to the first point, in theory, if you hired the right people, there would be people, granted, you will get rid of the newer people first. But in theory, if you hire the right people, these people would be valuable. That's why you hire them in the first place. Their experience, their knowledge, their qualifications. Now they will, of course, have to seek employment elsewhere. And let's just say that, we get enough natural gas, so we have to start back train 1. Most likely what will happen is the majority of them will already be employed with another employer. And right now, I don't really think it's an employer's market globally. Where are you going to find good people with the expertise? And, of course, we had them in Trinidad. They might leave Trinidad. Even if we poach from other parts of the petrochemical industry, it just means that the petrochemical industry will have a bit of a brain drain. More on that tomorrow. So we might end up with our second, third, fourth choice for some of these roles. We might lose expertise. Now, granted, listen, I'm not saying that Atlantic LNG is wrong for doing this. And I'm not too sure if they specified I can't remember if they specified what staff they were laying off, but they're not wrong. If you're not operating at 100%, you have to cut down staff because you're paying staff, extra staff, but you're not operating fully. That doesn't make sense. It's just that if the government wanted to have confidence in the energy sector, this is not necessarily, it's not like a major death blow to that. But it's not a good sign. It's a bad sign. Hopefully it's a minor bad sign. I guess, it's hard to tell from, I'm not someone who's in the industry and has that experience, but it's not a good sign, I don't think. Anyone would say that it's a good sign. Because again, ideally, when it comes time to restart Train 1, will we have the expertise readily available, or will we get loyal people who might not have all the experience and qualifications necessary? What's to prevent an industrial accident from happening again? Folks, I'll end that there. When we come back, I will get into what happened with regards to the Prime Minister's virtual appearance at Parliament last week, when a big question was asked and it blew up over the weekend with regards to claims made on human trafficking in TNT. And of course, later on, we will have ASP Ali. So stay tuned, folks, to Talking Point on WESN HD, your content capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Have we taken into account the experiences of those who have received a devastating diagnosis but persevered, fought, and are survivors today? I welcome Ms. Sally Babulal, a brave woman who was diagnosed with breast cancer. She will share with us her experience of a life-changing journey.
When you get diagnosed,
urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's youth to gain answers that keep for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome back, folks. This is Talking Point. And an important talking point, I think, is the phenomenon of what happened over the course of the weekend, where it started off with the Prime Minister. He has COVID, he's taking Parliament virtually. Of course, there's a parliamentary session where the opposition is allowed to ask the Prime Minister questions. And the sixth question in, MP Rodney Charles, he had a question that I think that I'm not entirely sure if everyone knew at the time it would eventually blow up into the situation that it did. Now, it's interesting how this all unfolded, because I think it exposed a couple of cracks with regards to our politicians or political systems. Anyway, let's first see what the session in Parliament, what was said there by the Prime Minister and MP Charles in the question and answer segment, and then we'll get into the responses that came out of that over the weekend. It's time to cue this.
Member for Naparima.
Madam Speaker, Honorable Prime Minister, will the Prime Minister inform the House why Trinidad and Tobago is unable to come off the Tier 2 watch list rating in the United States Trafficking in Persons report?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the government of Trinidad and Tobago continues to actively work with the government of the United States on improving its ratings on the United States Trafficking in Persons report. And in fact, the United States is helping in the hiring of specific consultants to assist. One of the biggest issues currently is the lack of convictions, which is not under the government's control. The government continues to provide resources to the judiciary, the DPP, and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to assist in this regard. Madam Speaker, this issue started with respect to issues of lack of legislation. We did in fact put the legislation in place. Then it was query about charges, and then it was shown that persons have been charged. Now it has shifted to an absence of convictions. Well, then that is not in the government's remit, but we have come a long way and we are working towards closing the loop.
For Naparima.
Prime Minister, the July 19, 2022 U.S. Trafficking in Persons report indicated that our country maintained its position on the Tier 2 watch list, in part because, and I quote, it did not take action against senior government officials alleged in 2020 to be involved in human trafficking. End of quote. Would the Prime Minister state whether he's aware of this information? Secondly, what action is being taken?
Well, it's only one question you're allowed as a supplementary.
One question will be, what action is being taken in respect of this allegation by the U.S. State Department?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, we did hear that allegation, and when we investigated it, we discovered it was referring to current members of Parliament, none of which is on the government side. So my colleague might be able to help me in finding out who they were talking about.
Prime Minister. Prime Minister, we just lost the end of your response.
Yes, I was saying, Madam Speaker, that we did hear that statement and we investigated and discovered that they were not talking about people on the government side. And therefore I was saying that maybe the member could help us to identify who exactly these assertions were aimed at.
Minister, for the obfuscation, but why has no action been taken, whichever side it came from?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, action against persons who commit crime is a matter for the police. If the member is calling on the police to investigate his colleague, then he doesn't need me to get involved in that.
Member for Naparima.
Aware that under the Constitution, the government is responsible for overall control and policy of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, that might be so, but the government, and by the government I mean the cabinet and the executive, has no role in determining who is prosecuted. That is a matter for the police. And the member knows that. So if he wants to go after his colleague, let him do so without trying to get the government involved. If that allegation has substance by evidence, that's a police matter. And if the member is so excited to go after his colleague, let him go so alone. He cannot invite the government into that. The government does not determine who the police go after or who the police arrest for any crime, not the least of which human trafficking and the running of brothels.
So two things came out of that exchange. The first one is that the Prime Minister is saying, well, it's not a member on our side, it's a member on your side. And the second one, which I want to deal with first, is that he's saying, well, look, the government cannot directly instruct the police what to do. And of course, MP Charles is saying, why hasn't anything been done? This, of course, is a very complex question, but it boils down to this. Before I get into that, also, former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith weighed in on the situation, said it's all just a blame game. And again, he also reiterated the question, you know, or rather, he made the statement of it is the responsibility, ultimate responsibility of the government. True, yes, ultimate responsibility. What that means is you have oversight. However, what have we here on Talking Point been saying over and over and over and over again about the situation with the Police Service Commission and the appointment of the Commissioner of Police? It is an independent position appointed by an independent body of which the government is not supposed to have any influence or control. You don't want the government to be able to tell the police what to do. So by asking direct questions or questions that are too direct with regards to that, why haven't you done anything? Why haven't you done anything? To imply as though you want the government to make arrests. You want the government to go after somebody. Well, they're not supposed to. So I just want to put that out there because we have to be consistent. A principle has to apply whether you like the circumstances of the situation in question or not. We have to be consistent. We cannot then now say, oh, but this is a problem, so we want special powers for the government to deal with it, or we want them to ignore the law. No, that is how dictators are formed. Because they slowly ask for more and more authority to deal with these emergency situations. And you slowly but surely vote your freedom away. So the flip side, of course, is, Mr. Prime Minister, please remember what you just said when the next controversy about a Commissioner of Police selection comes up, as well as with regards to any questions about the previous selection and the previous failure of a selection. So this is the thing. Yes, emotionally, it's great to say, why haven't you done anything? But you need to be a bit more specific about what you're asking the government to do. Because the former commissioner was right, as much as I also think he should have been a bit more accurate in his statements. The government has ultimate responsibility. But what does that mean? It means that when there's time to appoint a new commissioner, they could debate in Parliament. That's the part of the process they are involved in. It means that they are involved with the budget of the Ministry of National Security. It means that they could legislate, which they have done, but the issue now is the legislation has not proven ineffective to get convictions. That is a common thread, by the way, and that may be now the question is, should the current legislation be reevaluated if that is part of the problem? There's also, of course, the judiciary. They could request the commissioner. They could do whatever mechanisms they can with regards to policy of the police, but there are limits on what they can do with regards to the TTPS. They also could do the same with the judiciary, but there are limits there as well. But to what extent? Now, you see, ultimately, when the big decisions like selecting, and this is why the Commissioner of Police is so important, by the way, right? You can't mess with the merit list and the Police Service Commission. Don't mind, it did happen, but you're not supposed to. Right, moving on. You debate in Parliament. These are the candidates. This is their qualifications. We debate. We pick the best one. Right? It's important because now that the person's there, for the next 3 years, depending on their character or their strength of character, not to say if they're wajang. As we've seen with former Commissioner Griffith, you could stand up to the government for 3 years. Afterwards, however, they could replace you. It'll take a while, go through the process, depending on what the merit list says. Why they didn't just do that from the start? Because they effectively just went through the proper process and it worked well enough. And Gary is gone. Okay. Didn't have to go through a lot of rigmarole. But that's it. Now it's up to Ayla Christopher, based on the budget that she's given, and based on the other pieces of the national security apparatus, the judiciary, the DPP, his office, understaffed, underfunded, to see about this matter. So please, folks, don't be asking the Prime Minister to be more hands-on about something he's not supposed to be hands-on for. That's a slippery slope. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. And kudos to the Prime Minister for having the right answer. We expect you to stand by it, Mr. Prime Minister. Also, get well soon. Now, the other thing, of course, later on, and we might not have enough time for this, so I'll try and be brief. The opposition leader, she came out and said, look, senior government officials, what is this foolishness about opposition members? And I would just like to remind the public that our illustrious opposition leader seems to not understand what the Westminster system of government entails. Because it is common parlance to say, well, there's the government and the opposition. But in the United States, what they say is there's an administration, and there's a House majority, and a House minority, and a Senate majority, and a Senate minority. And there might technically be an opposition party, but that's not necessarily a term that they throw about that often. Because right now, the opposition party is the House majority. And in the previous administration, that is to say with Trump, I believe, the opposition party was also the House majority. And during Obama's administration, I believe he did not have control of the Senate. His party was the Senate minority, I believe. One of the parliamentary arms, his party was in the minority. They don't use the same terms as we do. More importantly, technically speaking, Madam Senior Counsel, the opposition is a part of the government. You get paid by the government. You're part of Parliament. Parliament is an arm of the government. It is the legislative branch of which you're a member of. Characteristics of a Westminster system: head of state, head of government, executive branch, parliamentary opposition. So senior government official does not mean government minister. Backbenchers are not junior government officials. This is objectively speaking, not subjectively speaking, not informally speaking. Objectively speaking, an MP is a senior government official. Because there isn't that much levels above an MP in a government. But there are a lot of bureaucrats underneath an MP who don't have the same precedence or not supposed to carry the same precedence as an MP. Now, informally, an MP might be a pariah. That's a whole other conversation. So I would just like to find out, Madam, exactly who bestowed your silk upon you? I think it's pretty basic. On a technical level, the opposition is part of the government. So when the United States says senior government officials, it could very well be an opposition member. Now, Devan Maharaj said he has seen an internal UNT investigation, but here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. We're talking about 6 years before this, before the claim of 2020. And this is very important to understand. None of these things prove anything. What the Prime Minister said was technically right, but it doesn't prove what he said to be true. What the opposition leader said was technically wrong. It doesn't prove that it's not a member of the PNM. It just makes her, in my opinion, look silly. She doesn't necessarily understand what's going on. Dr. Rudam Munilal, he came out and said, well, I did not, because Mr. Maharaj said he was involved in the investigation. Mr. Munilal said, I don't know about no investigation. And this is interesting now because we have two public statements which directly contradict each other. And I don't really see the wiggle room, which means that, from my perspective, one of these gentlemen seem to be lying. There's no proof. All we know is that, in my opinion, the opposition is looking a little foolish with the arguments that they're making on this issue. It's not the first time they took on a very important issue and gummed it up and muddied the waters. And Dewan Maraj, as a former member of the opposition, how much is he a supporter of the PNM? So there's a little bit of weight there, but that's circumstantial. TNT politics at its finest. Any day, there's a very good chance we ain't gonna get any real details on the matter. But the communication skills that have been seen, it's actually interesting that the Prime Minister comes out looking quite well in this. Quite well. Really and truly, because of the opposition's unforced errors. Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll be welcoming the ASP. His final, I could say, assessment on the carnival safety, what has happened. He will report to us on how it all went down. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point on WESN HD. We'll be right back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Point, folks. Of course, Carnival 2023 is in the books, but the assessment of it from various angles and various issues is ongoing. And it's a conversation that we will probably continue to have on Talking Point, at least, intermittently for the next week. But of course, this morning we welcome our TTPS Media Ambassador Ashraf Ali, acting ASP, And, well, he's here to speak with us with regards to the safety and security of Carnival, because we've gotten the reports, the claims made by the politicians, but now let's hear from a member of the service himself. First of all, good morning, ASP Ali.
Good morning. It's nice to be here again.
So, of course, Carnival just happened. One of the things that I found interesting, and I did say that the former commissioner did say, well, no, Carnival wasn't safe. This is to counteract the politicians who said it was safe, or the claims that it was safe. And he said, well, look at all these crimes that they had and the amount of violence and murders, and even one foreigner got shot in the leg, from what I understand. But I believe those things happened on the weekend. Carnival, Monday and Tuesday was relatively incident-free. I don't recall of any incident that happened in those 2 days off the top of my head. Right. So how would the TTPS assess that now? Is Monday and Tuesday the primary focus? And what about the weekend leading up to Carnival?
Well, firstly, let me just say, I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of our stakeholders for Carnival 2023. We had persons who came on board, such as Calypsonians, who came on board and joined with our fight against crime to bring out some of the messages that we were utilizing. All the media houses, right, the spectators, the revelers, all stakeholders who made Carnival 2023 a success. Now, success might be viewed at different focal points. From a Trinidad and Tobago Police Service perspective, Carnival Monday and Tuesday, which we measured from Sunday night, 4 a.m. into Wednesday, because that's where all of our resources and all of our efforts are being placed directly to manage the volume of persons that are coming into the city and who have in Carnival based on the proclamation. So we use that as a measuring stick for the proclamation, because Carnival officially starts as 4 a.m. based on a proclamation. So Carnival 2023 was in fact safe in the context from the Carnival period, right? We had we had some minor issues. Not major or major SRCs, as the case may be, that would have caused a damper on Carnival. We had a lot of officers on the ground, we had a lot of exercises taking place, and in all, Carnival specifically was in fact safe and successful from a police perspective. What we also have to consider, based on all the perspective, is that leading up to Carnival, there's a height of activities, probably because we have a lot of events taking place, as well as where we have to be police come leading up to Carnival. A lot of events take place in this last 2 months, from beginning of January to now, right, to Carnival. And even over the weekend, we still had some events taking place that was post-Carnival events. Yes. So when you look at the number of events that are taking place, sometimes we had about 5 or 6 events taking place within the city of Port of Spain on one night. The policing efforts, notwithstanding you have officers working in these events, but the policing efforts holistically had to be beefed up, because we had to have additional patrols, other agencies, and other station districts, and other things have to be put in place, because it's not only the event, it's everything that follows the event after the event. So leading up to the event, we had a lot of activities. Our exercises and our Carnival exercises would have started as far back as Christmas, from Christmas leading all the way into Carnival, into the New Year, leading all the way, because we also had events taking place, and we had our policing efforts. We had several different exercises taking place downtown. We had for Carnival specifically, we had SOCA, securing all our Carnival activities, which is one of the operations that was taking place in Port of Spain. With respect to that, we had Operation Dare, from Carnival leading in, and then we had a lot of other exercises taking place in other divisions that was surrounded towards making Carnival and making the areas safe. Now, leading up to Carnival weekend, let's start from Carnival Friday. We had a large number of activities. We had a lot of persons who were arrested. We had firearms recovered. We had increased number of patrols. Yes, we also had a number of different type of crimes that was taking place.
Well, with regards to that, I do want to ask, because the TTPS is, yes, you have all this presence and a lot of patrols because there's a lot of events. So a lot of it is you're watching out. There's a lot of members of the public in various locations just for these events alone. It's not as though all the crime was centered around the event. So is it that criminals might figure out, or at least they're eventually going to figure out, well, look, police is busy with carnival, so we could, make trouble where carnival is not happening on a given night.
And that's important from our perspective, because when you look at the offenses that was taking place over the weekend, leading up to carnival, I would say, pickpocketing, larceny from person, larceny motor vehicles, you had incidents of shootings. Those are crimes of opportunity. And once there are opportunities, and persons choose to find an opportunity, we will have crimes of those type of things. The incident over on the avenue was in fact a crime of opportunity, in that those individuals knew who they were looking for at what point in time, and they committed the offense. We had police officers in and around that entire area throughout the period, but like at everything else, the patrols would not have been there, and the presence would not have been. So they looked for the opportunities.
When the patrol was far
enough away, when you didn't see enough officers in
and it was a specific target that they were going
specifically to a target, and it was directed specifically that the indiscriminate shooting is the problem, right? Yes. Where they didn't indiscriminate, and unfortunately, British national got injured. Fortunately, it was not fatal. But at the end of the day, our national got injured. These are things that we always have to watch for and look at when you're leading to for carnival. So, from different perspectives, if you look at it from different perspectives, on one hand, you might say there was a lot of incidents, and it was not safe. On the other hand, when you look at analyzing it more in depth, the period where we had the most amount of persons on the streets, which is Carnival Monday and Tuesday, it was safe because we had a lot more opportunities presenting itself, but the police was able to minimize that amount of opportunity, minimize the opportunities for criminal elements to get involved and cause any more problems.
Well, with that specifically, Monday and Tuesday in particular, but also in general, has the public been cooperating or cooperative enough with regards to carnival safety and security? And of course, Monday and Tuesday, when instructions were given out or directions were given out, was there enough cooperation, or were people a bit, hey, it's carnival, why are you bothering us for?
No, from our point of view, the public was quite responsible. They came out to enjoy themselves. They did in fact enjoy themselves in a responsible manner. We didn't have as much to do in terms of managing and directing the persons. They complied, right? Even the two-way around the savannah, persons took a little time to get to understand the two-way around the savannah, but as soon as they realized the situation was two around the savannah, traffic started to flow. And the persons really and truly, we got a lot of comments, because I was in Port of Spain, walking around Port of Spain, Carnival Monday and Tuesday, and when you listen to the comments, they might say that I'm just saying it, right? But when you listen to the persons on the streets, they say, officers, thank you all very much for being out here. This was safe. They had a lovely time. They saw officers at all the locations, all the streets, and they were happy to see officers out there.
Well, so the next question is this the first time you've been on the road for Carnival? I'm just for this.
No, it's
just
not.
To clarify. So, from your perspective, were there the same level of public participation on the road from what you could see as with some of the larger years gone by? Because I think it was reasonable to assume, this might just be a mass of people, and we need to be ready for that, because we can't just say oops if we're not ready and this happens. So I get that. But did they actually have the large crowds? Because I am wondering to some extent if part of the reason was, I've heard in certain areas Carnival didn't have the level of participation, so it might have made in some respects, it might have made the situation easier to manage.
Well, based on what we were doing, through the Commissioner of Police and the Gold Commander, Mr. Collis Hazel, we would have put systems in place in our anticipation that we had a large crowds. We didn't want to take it for granted that, persons may come out. So we put our systems in place. So that was the reason why we had a lot of activities taking place for Carnival in terms of number of persons that we had on the streets and all the other activities. Yes, we didn't have, from all my being on the streets, there wasn't as much crowd as Carnivals gone by. I guess because of the crime statistics, the COVID situation, and they may economics might have caused some of that at the same time.
I would guess economics might be the largest one. But
some of all those factors would have contributed to the low turnout for Carnival 2023. Notwithstanding the low turnout, we the police made sure that we didn't have a low turnout. We were there to make sure that we had a sufficient strength on the ground.
Well, of course, now moving forward, there's already been, violent crimes reported over the weekend. In fact, I know of someone who had a minor emergency, had to go to Mount Hope, and he told me that he was told, well, look, it just might be on the weekends now. We might get more shootings, so that might bump you down the line. So, and we've already seen, shootings happen. There's already a police shooting since Carnival. The PCA says they're investigating. I don't want to proclaim judgment on that. There'll probably be a lot of opinions on that. But with regards to moving forward, you just had all of this exercise of having to deal with Carnival and putting boots on the ground. It's going to cause the TTPS service members to, it's going to exhaust your personnel to some extent. But crime is not stopping. Moving forward, what is it looking like now for the TTPS?
Well, unfortunately, over the weekend, we had 4 murders taking place, which pushed our murder figure to 103, between 103 to 104, I think 103, which is not a good sign.
Yeah, that's not good at all.
Good statistical sign.
Yeah.
In 2 months, we done reach 100 already.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as bad as some of the months last year, but
yeah. But if you look at that, if you take that from a statistical perspective, and with all the analytical data you're utilizing, if you project that, it's not looking good at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that, and we are understanding that from the perspective. The commissioner is in fact going before Joint Select Committee this afternoon, and she will address the questions that are coming up. And there are a lot of things that, as a new commissioner, she would want to, and a new executive, they will want to put things together. We will wait to hear what are the new strategies that she will be putting together. She has the opportunity to do that now as a commissioner of police. So those are some of the things that we have to wait and hear what is taking place. I know the executive is also looking at it from statistical data perspective, as to where it could lead to and what we need to change. It will always be, when you look at these incidents are always considered to be crimes of opportunity. These are opportunistic crimes. And it's no excuse you're going to make, but it's just not logically possible at every single moment that you could anticipate that someone plans to go and shoot someone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Those individuals, I might be hypothetically speaking, those individuals may have already planned based on some confrontation that they may have, historical confrontation that those individuals may have, that they intend to shoot an individual or to find this individual, and any opportunity to find him, they would look for it and take the opportunity to commit the offense.
Well, therein lies the issue, folks, because even one of the most violent crimes we've seen last year, the Pennywise robbery, that was, to some extent, they saw an opportunity. It was pre-planned, granted, right, and executed, but it just goes to show the escalation of violence we do have to consider it, because this time last year, for this month, I think we're on pace to have almost double the murder rate of February. Last year was 36. This year is February, we're probably well over 40, pushing 50. We still have a few days to go. It's a challenge for the society. We have to do our part. However, right now that includes news on the hour next here. And when we return, we'll open up the phone lines on Talking Point.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. CSO releases index of retail prices. Prime Minister slams opposition leader following human trafficking allegations. NTA says Prime Minister must stop blaming others for his failures with regard to human trafficking. And internationally, more than 100 fared dead in Italy's shipwreck. Now for the details. The Central Statistical Office has announced the release of the Index of Retail Prices for the month of December 2022. The All Items Index of Retail Prices, calculated from the prices collected for the month of December 2022, was 123.2, representing an increase of 0.5 points or 0.4% above the index for November 2022. The index for food and non-alcoholic beverages increased from 145.9 in November to 149.0 in December, reflecting an increase of 2.1%. The inflation rate for December 2022 was 5.8%. This represents an increase from 5.6%, which was recorded in the previous period, January to November 2022, January to November 2021. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has chastised opposition leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar for apparently steering clear of the very serious personal experience of a former minister of her cabinet, who spoke out about what he knows and what he knows that she knew in relation to human trafficking allegations. The Prime Minister says that since the opposition leader shamelessly invokes and accuses her parliamentary colleagues of covering up the crime of pedophilia, if she can point to any person, situation or shred of evidence to support her disgraceful slander. Former UNC Minister Devant Miraj claimed he had knowledge of human trafficking taking place within the party. Miraj alleged he was offered access to Venezuelan and Colombian prostitutes procured by officials in the UNC during his time in the party. He said human trafficking activities by UNC members was an open secret in the party. While the National Transformation Alliance notes the continued trend of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley to engage in the blame game in an attempt to deflect from the fact that after 8 years in office, his administration has to take full responsibility for the U.S. Trafficking in Persons 2022 report, which places Trinidad and Tobago on a Tier 2 human trafficking watch list. NTA leader Gary Griffith has advised Prime Minister Dr. Rowley to stop the finger-pointing, appoint competent persons, take a page out of Gary Griffith's book, but most of all, focus on getting the job done. On to international news now. There are fears that more than 100 people, including children, have died after their boat sank in rough seas off southern Italy. At least 62 migrants are confirmed to have died. The vessel, which is thought to have been carrying some 200 people, broke apart while trying to land near Croton on Sunday. People from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia and Iran were on board. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, we're here with ASP Ashraf Ali, TTPS Media Ambassador. He, as always, is willing to take questions from the public. So we're opening up the phone lines one time. We want to hear from you, the viewer. Ask what you have to say. You could, of course, bring anything. If you want to have any questions or make any comments or correct me, maybe I said something wrong earlier on all of the things that I spoke about, or perhaps you might want to challenge the TTPS Media Ambassador with regards to what he said with regards to carnival safety and the crime situation in a general sense. Feel free to call in about any of those things, about the 1 year later Paria tragedy, still no word about when we're getting information with regards to what's going on in Tobago. If you have more information on the contractor situation there and the awarding of contracts, please feel free to call in. Of course, this situation, you just saw it spelled out on our news on the hour. Thanks to Denise Martin for that. But if you have anything else you want to speak about, because I know a couple of you might very well have stuff, there's still more things to unwrap with regards to Carnival, please feel free to call in as well. And don't wait for the 11th hour to call in. First caller on the line, Pitty Valley. Good morning.
Good morning, Sean. I want to chime in on the U.S. report to the trafficking. When the U.S. report used the term government, you see the two parties will sit in that beautiful red house in town there. Both of them are in government, who legislate, make laws, and debate are in government. The only difference is who have the majority runs the police or the finance at the police. So when the U.S. uses the term in government, it could be the PNM or the UNC. So when Ms. Bicester is trying to play smart with words, she should stop it. 2, what Rodney Charles and Mr. Monilan is asking the Prime Minister to do is to call whoever is the commissioner of police and ask them what the report is about, who is the person, and I want you to go and investigate it and tell me. We have to be very careful if we're going down that road, and at the same time, we just be saying that is an independent body and they mustn't touch that and so. So we must be really careful what we are asking for and what we are saying. Have a good morning, Sean.
Thank you, caller. Yes, you echo my sentiments to T, because therein lies the fact, right? The government is not supposed to be telling the police, hey, investigate this and arrest this person.
No, they're not. So based on everything that is coming out, I would leave that to the Commissioner of Police to determine whether or not. And if anything has to be brought for an investigation, it will come to the TTPS for an investigation to be launched. So we will wait to hear what is the situation with respect to that.
Right, and now technically senior government official could also mean people at senior public servant levels. However, the Prime Minister did specify in the question and answer segment that it was a member of Parliament through their investigations, and I'm not entirely sure if that also included discussions with the US or if they just investigated it up to a point. Of course, now from my standpoint, why hasn't those investigations gone further? We have a call on the line from San Fernando. Good morning.
Morning, Sean. Morning, yes.
Good morning, sir.
Sean, the first comment, Sean, is about that Atlantic LNG issue. That's just a storm that pick up. You have management coming in, new management have different priorities. Some decide they could be more efficient, and COVID would have shown them there are some efficiencies that can be gained. So I think it's just because of that. Secondly, this is a question for you. You are the media ambassador for the TTPS, right? And you come and appear on the program on the behest of the hierarchy of the police service. So my question is this to you, and it's something that needs to be asked, and I'm so glad that the Commissioner is going to appear before the Director Committee this evening. And I ask this in the context of organized crime and what we see developing with organized crime in Trinidad and Tobago. So I don't expect you to answer. I expect the commissioner to answer this, but I'm asking it to you because you're here. Is there a murder for hire business in the organized crime circle in Trinidad and Tobago? That is my question at this point.
Thank you, caller.
Well,
are you able to answer?
I can, from a general perspective. Criminal elements, once you're in a criminal enterprise, there will always be that element within it where someone will take a job. Right? So in that context, there is the possibility, and there's always something that we have to look at. And it's not in Trinidad and Tobago alone. When you look at all crime syndicates throughout the world in organized crime, we have what we call, we have what we call the hitman, the hitman. Right, where
the enforcer.
Yeah, the enforcer. You hire someone to commit the offense, to keep yourself as clean as possible away from the offense. There is, in fact, that is part of a crime environment and a crime syndicate environment. So yes, there may be the possibility of it, and there also could be that element taking place in our crime situation in Trinidad also.
So the only thing is, I'm not asking you this, you don't have to answer, but there's also the example of Made Incorporated, which was like a group unto itself, which then provided services. So I do wonder if the caller was asking about if there's like a large formal racket, and not just, well, individual crime groups have their individual triggermen. Something to consider.
Yeah, so...
Well, but we have a caller from Sawan. Morning,
hello,
caller.
Good morning. Yeah, good morning to Sean.
Morning.
And also good morning to the police officer there.
Morning, sir.
Yeah, all right. On the question of, well, first of all, let me say from the very outset, Trinidad must be indeed be the land of milk and honey. Because it seems that when you're talking about human trafficking, it would seem that the preferred country in the universe to come to is Trinidad. Trinidad, it would seem from people who want to come to go to another country, leave their country of birth, the preferred country, the paradise country, the land of milk and honey is Trinidad. Because if they're coming from some part of Asia, they're coming from Sub-Africa, other Caribbean islands, it would seem that you would tell yourself, I'm heading towards the land of milk and honey, called Trinidad and Tobago. But this question of human trafficking has been with us a long time, you know. And I'll tell you what, in the aftermath of the PNM losing the federal elections in 1958, when they lost the federal elections to the DLP in 1958, 6 seats to 4. The DLP got 6 seats and the PNM got 4 seats. That awakened a political consciousness in Dr. Williams, the political leader and premier of Trinidad and Tobago at the time. And he opened the floodgates and allowed thousands and thousands of small islanders, mostly from the Grenada and Telesex and St. Vincent, to come here. So he was the man who kicked off this human trafficking. People may want to deny it. You have those who would deny, you have those PNM sycophants who would want to deny it. But he is the man who started the ball rolling by bringing people here from the small islands to swell the voting bank of the PNM, because he saw a DLP takeover in the aftermath of the of the PNM losing the federal elections. To put it in closing, Sean, and the officer there, he, in inverted commas, he foresaw an Indian takeover. And this is what triggered off everything. So let the callers call in and deny that. But that is the facts of this country. David Granger tried the same thing just before he demitted office in Guyana by bringing in undocumented Haitians. And the opposition took issue with that. Sean, thank you for giving me your time. I listened to your comments off it. Thank you. God bless you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, caller. I'm not disagreeing with your point. I will just say, though, that on a technical level, I don't know if that will be considered the same thing as human trafficking. It all depends on to what extent the those being trafficked were victims of fraud, and yes, they probably are being exploited, even in the examples that you give. But to what extent were they being misled? Were they being held against their will, put in a situation that they have no control over? So I understand the point you're making, but we have to be very accurate with our use of technical terms, because when it gets to legal issues, then it matters a lot. We have a caller from Belmont. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Sean and the officer being there. All right. Last Friday before the carnival, we had a roadblock at the walkover and over. All right. I'm a compliant with rules and regulations and the law of Trinidad and Tobago. But the fact of the matter is, we see these vehicles, new vehicles, that are coming, manufactured and installing lights that are called driver lights, that will create a higher level of detection and prevent carnation on the roadway. So it's like a safety procedure. Yet still, all these manufacturers are bringing these vehicles, new vehicles, with these lights. I have upgraded my vehicle and installed as a safety procedure on my vehicle, because I was traveling from Port of Spain to South. So I see it as a safety to introduce on my vehicle also. My vehicle is a PPY, and I decided to install it. There and then, on Friday, the police told me that it is an offense. It's against the law, that my vehicle did not come with it, and I was charged $250 as a ticket. This is being upgraded in our international standard as a higher level of detection. It is being Googled, and you can see it as a safety precaution. And I don't think the manufacturers of an international standard would not introduce it if they don't see fit. Why it is that the police is charging people for trying to upgrade it, or trying to be safe also, or applying something that is as a safety also on their vehicle, because the vehicle was not, the vehicle didn't come with it.
What type of lights? What type of lights are this again?
It's conducted light. The light is not over illuminating to say that it is causing any blindness or creating any problem to other users. It's just a higher level of detection.
Let me just add to the callers here right now. Caller, unfortunately, the laws of Trinidad and Tobago is not that of the police service. What you are speaking about is unauthorized lights that is affixed to the vehicle. Once that vehicle has been inspected by licensing, and that vehicle was not inspected with those particular type of lights, any alteration to the vehicle is contrary to the regulation. So you would have to go back to licensing, indicate to them what you are putting onto your vehicle and get it cleared. The vehicles that are coming manufactured, they are inspected by licensing and cleared with those lights that you have on the vehicle. We have a number of persons who, yes, I understand that you're trying to say that you have a security perspective and authorized lights, but those lights are not authorized for that model of your vehicle that you have. And in order to do that, you have to go to licensing and get it authorized to that vehicle. Is licensing will give you the authorization whether or not that vehicle could be carrying that type of lights. Other than that, it is still an offense to have lights that are not authorized to that particular model and make of vehicle.
Is there any information for the general public to be aware of this?
You'll have to communicate that through licensing. Unfortunately, what happens is licensing has to say what is the authorized type of lights, because there are a lot of different lights outside there that you see vehicles coming and persons purchase these lights on the front sides and affix them to their vehicles. Now, I understand the purpose that you're trying to say that you're utilizing for a safety requirement, but at the same time, we have to ensure that whatever you're installing in your vehicle conforms to the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, because those lights was not that of it may be used in the US or other countries, but it cannot be utilized in Trinidad and Tobago on a vehicle that has not been manufactured with such a system. So my advice to you, even with respect to that, you could still go to licensing with the said lights on your vehicle. Speak to the licensing officers, they explain to the circumstances that you have. Let them re-inspect your vehicle with that particular light on it.
So then, once that happens, what will be the indicator to prevent the police from stopping and ticketing somebody in this situation against after they got licensing approval?
So then there are also communication that the licensor will communicate with us as to what and what is authorized in it, because there's a lot of changes with the lighting. You've seen a lot of LED type lights.
Right.
And,
but will it be specific to his vehicle, or will it be general, okay, this light on this model is now approved?
The thing about it is that you have to take individual situations by itself.
Okay.
Because all the models of vehicles cannot accommodate those type of lighting fixtures. Right. They alter the vehicles. I'm not saying this driver did that, the caller did that, but you have to look at it from a holistic point of view, because some vehicles did not even come with the systems to put it in. So you have to go through another system. Now, when you add in on different things to your vehicle, you put yourself at a risk at the same time.
Okay, we have a call on the line from Dabadi. Good morning, caller.
Pleasant morning. Wonderful program as usual.
Thank you.
Yes, good morning to you. I want to commend you and the CPS for ensuring that we had a safe carnival.
Well,
what is going to happen after 20 years, see? I am still not hearing anything about a simple thing as a work program or strategic plan. I'm very much interested in the progress of the CPS, but if Treasury hasn't been completed yet, and we are over 90 homicides, we're not looking too well. So I would like to know a little bit about the plan, and I want to suggest though, because you said that if you could criticize, you should be able to make a suggestion. We need some not conflict, but you need to police and civilians come up with some strategies to assist in the reduction of crime. Thank you, and no offense.
Yeah, so it's not the police service alone. It's the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who are responsible at the same time that made our work a little easier over the carnival period. Right? So yeah, commendation should be given to Trinidad and Tobago in the way that they treat with carnival and how they behave themselves around carnival.
Do you find that members of the public, they tend to be very amiable and agreeable, and the spirit of carnival does have that positive effect of it wipes away like that negative aggression you would see in
it does. The enjoyment, the freeness of it, and at the same time, the police officers during those periods will be a little more flexible because we understand the environment.
Well, I do believe before Carnival Monday and Tuesday, there was a situation where the public was advised, ladies, don't whine, well, in general, because they're WPCs, don't whine on police officers, and I think there was a video that went viral where a WPC was trying to shoot a woman off of an officer.
And you saw how professional it was handled, right? The female officer just told the masquerader, you can step away from the officer, simple as that. Because those things do happen.
So it's not too free?
No, it's not too free, but at the same time, those things happen. The caller indicated that they would like the public to get involved. I would like to inform the caller from Dabadi, which falls in the Aruka district, that he needs to have consultation with the inspector in charge of the Aruka police station. There is the station council meetings and the community meetings that you can engage with the inspector in the area and share your views on how they can police the Aruka area and the Dabadi area, right? So there's between Dabadi and Arima, but at the same time, he or she has an opportunity to be a part of the station council meeting. We always have a lot of stakeholders who share information with the police and they build communities together. And that's one of the things that we get opportunities for persons to get involved in it.
All right, folks, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point on WESN. That is the ASP Ashraf Ali. I'm sure Michael Small will be right back.
Know the signs of fraudulent investment. Follow the ABCs of investing. Ask questions. Beware of investment fraud. And check with the Trinidad and Tobago Securities and Exchange Commission first to verify that the individual and investment are registered. Protect you and your loved ones from investment fraud.
It's a fantastic February at Massage Haven as we celebrate Valentine's Carnival and our 1-year anniversary. For the entire month of February, take advantage of our special packages. For Valentine's, show your love with our lovebirds and I Just Adore You packages. Carnival, let's help you glow with 20% off on all sauna and massage combos. And as we turn 1 year old, special complimentary Massage Haven tokens of gratitude and keepsakes within our anniversary week. Massage Haven, 157B, Monroe Road, Cunupia.
All right, well, of course, welcome back to Talking More. The phone lines are closed. Just a quick final question, ASP Ali, with regards to Carnival and the ending of Carnival, because, you know, I think there was an incident in Couva, and I was also, might have been told of another incident where Carnival, the music trucks or the music or the revelry, even on a small scale, it was ended before midnight on Carnival Tuesday. So when exactly should the music be told to end, and how long could it keep playing until?
Right, so based on the proclamation, Carnival officially ends at 12 midnight on Carnival Tuesday, right? Notwithstanding that, in order to end at a particular time, you have to get this, and when they say Carnival ends, it doesn't mean that all the music and everything stops at that time automatically and then everybody just move around. You have thousands of persons on the streets. We have to ensure that we have to clear the roads and everything else follows. Now, music trucks and those individuals, as of 12 midnight, they no longer have permission to be on the streets. So in order for those individuals to those trucks to reach their point of origin,
wherever they're
right?
based, yeah,
they have to get there. So you can't tell them stop 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning they're still on the road because they are breach of, that's an offense now, because all their permissions and everything has now been is now null and void.
And no trying to play fast and loose with the rules and skip the edge.
No, as soon as 12 midnight, everything shuts off. So what we do is getting closer to midnight, so by 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, by 11, so we started to inform those individuals, slow down your music, stop off your music, and try to get to your location because you will no longer have permission as of 12 midnight to be on the road.
Right.
So then the trucks has to remain right there. And somebody has to come, you can't play new music, not at all. We have to clear the streets, we have to open up the streets to allow traffic to flow. The only persons that will continue to have permission to play are those persons who have the yearly bar license, who have the 24-hour bars, and persons levitate towards those individuals.
Right.
We also have conversations with those individuals and ask them to work with the police, because at the end of the day, if you continue playing your music until 12 in the morning, which you're legitimately authorized to, you will keep the crowd on the road. Okay. And you will keep the crowd here. And we don't want those type of things because they could add to more crime elements. So
it's a subjective thing, but it's real in that the Carnival crowd will have a larger and different dynamic than your Tuesday night crowd.
Yes.
Okay, well, folks, that is, practical reason, explanation to that. As we promised, I want to say my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shah, he apologizes for not being here. He is under the weather. We here at WESN wish him to get well soon. But I could assure you folks that he is fine, just, not feeling so good. So he had to take some time to rest and recover. But as he would always say, today is a good day to have a good day. And of course, to start a new week. So I would tell everybody again, as the ASP will rightfully remind us every now and then, we have to do our part with regards to crime, but also I'll take it a step further, we have to do our part with regards to society, how we are governed how our country moves. Do we want it to be smooth, or do we want the potholes to continue piling up, or in this case, you know, spreading about? So folks, that's it for today's edition of Talking Point. I want to thank all the callers, and we have tomorrow John Arnold from Tobago to speak more about the topic of Carnival. I will see you tomorrow morning. Goodbye.